My dear Lord, please guide us so that we can appreciate how you reveal that through the path of the head, the path of knowledge, we can end in the path of the heart, the path of love, the path of bhakti. Let us recite this verse, 1322. This is considered the seed verse from which the next 6 chapters develop. Vishwanath Thakur mentioned this as the Bija Shloka. So, I'll tell the meaning first. Purusha, that is the living being, Prakriti Sthohi, becomes situated in material nature. Why does it become situated? Bhungte, because of the desire to enjoy. What? Prakriti Jangunan, the modes that are born of material nature. And because of that, Karanam Guna Sangosya, that because of the cause, the association of the modes, Asya, this living being, Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu, this living being takes birth in various species, auspicious and inauspicious. Sad Asad. Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhungte Prakriti Jangunan Karanam Guna Sangosya Sadasad Yoni Janmasu. Once more we'll recite responsively and then 3 times we'll recite collectively. Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhungte Prakriti Jangunan Karanam Guna Sangosya Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu. Together. Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhungte Prakriti Jangunan Karanam Guna Sangosya Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu. Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhungte Prakriti Jangunan Karanam Guna Sangosya Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu. Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhungte Prakriti Jangunan Karanam Guna Sangosya Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu. Welcome back. So today is our final day in our study of the Song of God, and in the 12th chapter we completed the section on Bhakti. Now, like I mentioned, the Gita is a natural conversation, like a podcast. It's not a structured class. So this division of the Gita into various sections, that is a subsequent division analyzed by the commentators. The Gita itself flows as a natural conversation. And basically, like I mentioned, after the 10th chapter, from 2.7 till around 10.14, that's the class that Krishna gives. And after that, there are subsequent question answers that are going on. So, in 10th chapter itself there's one question, 11th chapter there's one question, 12th chapter there's one question. The 13th chapter question, the answer goes on fairly long. So this is the third. In the 13.1, Arjuna asks a question that is apparently unrelated with whatever Krishna has spoken, at least in terms of the content of what Krishna has spoken. Arjuna asks about, in 13.1, he asks about 6 terms. Now we won't get into technicalities of the terms, but he asks about Purusha, Prakriti, which are the terms which are coming in this verse. Now while these are terms which are familiar in the Vedic tradition, he also asks about Kshetra and Kshetragya. Now these are terms which Arjuna, Krishna has not used in the Gita at all. So, and then he also asks about Jnana and Gyeya, which are common terms. At least Gyan is a common term, Gyeya may not be, but Gyan is. So he asks, what is the meaning of these 6 terms? So why is Arjun suddenly asking this? It's like Krishna has outlined a worldview. Krishna has given a worldview of spirituality centered on bhakti. It's a bhakti centered worldview. Now, Arjun himself has previously heard, he has also heard many things. So, whatever knowledge is Arjuna's previous knowledge, he is trying to connect with the current knowledge he has acquired. So, for example, if we go to allopathic doctor and the doctor tells, okay, this is the kind of, say we have got some disease, this is the kind of treatment you're going to take, you get this antibiotics and you'll do this and you'll do that. And then, now we may ask, but what about side effects? Now the doctor may not even have used the word side effects, but we have heard the term before and it's related. So we ask. So Arjuna's terms are in that sense, these terms, they are not mentioned, but they are not irrelevant. They are relevant because, as example, after a treatment plan, a patient asks about side effects. So, when Krishna is asked these questions, Krishna answers briefly. Now, Krishna himself doesn't go into a lot of technical definition of those terms. He just explains. We have to repeatedly remember that the Bhagavad-gita is spoken on a battlefield. And Krishna always has in mind that everyone is waiting. Before the Kurukshetra war really took off, when initially Bhishma was the commander, as long Bhishma was the commander, both the sides followed the codes of war to a large extent. And therefore when Bhishma saw that Krishna and Arjuna were having an earnest conversation, Bhishma just raised his hand and told his warriors to stop. And they stopped and they waited till the conversation got over. In those times, war was like a test. It was like sports in some ways. In sports, both sides want to win, but it was like a test of strength and skill. It was may the better side win. It was not that somehow you have to win at all costs. Win at all costs means you use tricks, use deceptions, attack the enemy when they are unprepared. That was not the mood, at least not initially till Bhishma was the commander. So everybody was waiting, but still Krishna is aware that while they are waiting, everybody is getting impatient. So Krishna doesn't give elaborate answers. We remember how Krishna is an expert teacher. So he is bringing everything back to the core point of what is Arjuna to do. So now bringing the whole discussion to that point takes some time. In fact, in this Jnana section, the reference to the war is minimal. Because, as I mentioned, the Gita is not a book about war primarily. In fact, if you consider in the 18 chapters of the Gita, there are references. If you consider chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now there are references to war, of course, in the battlefield setting in the first chapter. In the second chapter, Krishna does mention, therefore, fight, sukhe dukhe samay krita, without consideration of victory or loss, you should fight. In the third chapter also, Krishna says, if you don't fight, you will be leading people towards the responsibility. It's interesting, in the fourth chapter, Krishna talks more about the inner war than the outer war. Krishna talks about fight with the weapon of knowledge against ignorance. In the fifth chapter, there is no reference to war. In the 6th chapter, there is no reference to war. In the 7th chapter, there is no reference to war. In the 8th chapter, there is only one reference, Mam Anusmara Yudhyaja. Remember me and fight. In the 9th chapter, there is no reference to war. In the 10th chapter, there is no reference to war. In the 11th chapter, there is a reference to war, but it is more in terms of the revelation of the universal form. In the 12th chapter, no reference. 13th chapter, no reference. 14th chapter, no reference. 15th chapter, no reference. Like that. 16, 17, also no reference. And even the 18th chapter, there is only an indirect reference. Indirect reference means that Arjuna says, I will do your will. So references to war in the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita are very, very scarce. If some conversation is happening before a war, both sides will be discussing about the war. That will be what is foremost in the minds of people. But as we discussed, Krishna is not focusing on the circumstantial reasons for fighting. He's focusing on the universal principles for living and decision making. So, if the 11th chapter did not have the Vishwarupa Darshan and specifically the Kala Rupa, then practically after the 5th chapter there would have no direct reference to the war at all in the Bhagavad Gita. After the 4th chapter, in fact. So, the point is that the discussion, you remember I had made this diagram right at the beginning that there is specifics and then there are universals. So most of the Gita's discussion is happening at the level of universals. That means they're not talking about, okay, what did this person do and why should you fight because of that. They're discussing universal principles. Now, say if we meet someone who knows us very well and they ask us, how are you? If a casual friend asks us, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. It is a casual reply. In many places, especially in America and now increasingly India, how are you is a greeting, it's not a question. So actually when somebody asks, how are you? You just meant to reply fine. Like somebody says hello and you say hello. So how are you is not a question, it's a greeting. But if somebody is very close to us, they ask us, how are you? They know what is going on in our life. Then, how are you could mean many things. Okay, maybe we had some sickness, we had some treatment. How are we recovering for the treatment? Maybe we had some relationship upheaval. So how are we coping with that? The question, how are you, can have many deeper meanings. And it may go in beyond the specifics. Just what the question, how are you? So the point I'm making is, the same question can be about specifics, the same question can be about universals. Most of the Gita focuses on universal principles. So, still Krishna's expertise is that he keeps the universals connected to the specifics. He does not go into a random philosophical discussion. So here, in this section, Krishna explains the 6 terms, but he focuses on the point of the discussion. And the point is that Arjuna has to fight a war because the other fight is unreasonably attached to the kingdom and has been brutal, has been vicious. So in the Jnana section, which is from chapters 13 to 18, the Gita focuses primarily on the topic of human motivation. You see, the word motivation has 2 different meanings. Like if you say, what is your motivation in doing this? Intention. And somebody is a motivational speaker. Their motivation means inspiration. So, which meaning of motivation do you think the Gita is going to discuss here? Intention. So, human motivation means, see, earlier Krishna said that in the Karma Yoga section, why we do something is more important than what we are doing. Our consciousness, our intention matters. But now he is going to discuss why do people do what they do. So why is Duryodhan so obstinate? Why is so unreasonable? So that will be analyzed. So the Jnana section, while Arjuna asks just a question about some terms. So you could say Arjuna's question can seem to be technical terms. It can relate to technical terms. But Krishna's answer, it relates with human behavior and motivation. Human behavior, especially in terms of the opponent's behavior. Opponent's behavior, their motivation, and especially their motivation. This will become most apparent in the 16th chapter. But at this point, what Krishna, the verse we discussed, it describes the foundational nature of how illusion occurs. So we are all spiritual beings. That's what Krishna has described in the 2nd chapter itself. So now, how does a spiritual being come under illusion? So this verse says, Purushaha is the soul. Purushaha prakristhohi. So if we consider, I'll take the metaphor and then I'll explain it. Say if a child is watching a TV. Now, on the TV some show is going on and the child is glued to it. And maybe in that TV show some heroic action happens, the child gets excited. Maybe the villain comes up and is menacing and the child gets scared. And the child is going through a whole panorama of emotions. Now, why is the child going through those emotions? Because the child's consciousness is caught over here. So, similarly, Purushaha, Krishna says, Purusha is here, Prakriti is here. Purushaha Prakriti Sthohi. The consciousness gets locked because of their some sense objects over here. Bhunkte Prakriti Jan Gunan. Now, say somebody is watching a movie and somebody else is not interested in the movie. Then one person is experiencing a whole array of emotions and the other person is watching this person. Why are you getting so worked up about it? If it's a horror movie, this kid is getting scared. And somebody else is watching, you are safe in your home, you're sitting on a comfortable chair. Why are you so worked up about it? So, the kid, now for the kid, the emotion is real because the consciousness is caught over there. So basically for all of us, the Purusha, the soul, gets caught in Prakriti. How does the soul get caught? The consciousness gets caught. And why does it get caught? Bhunkte. Because of the desire to enjoy. If somebody didn't want to watch the movie and enjoy the movie, they wouldn't get caught in it. So because of the desire to enjoy, bhunkte prakriti jan gunan, the person gets caught. And this getting caught is not simply, okay, you watch one movie and it's over. It's we get caught and we stay caught. And Krishna is, in fact, extending this, that this illusion has consequences that will go over lifetimes. Sad asad yoni janmasu. A person will get birth in different species based on how they get caught in the illusion. So once our consciousness gets caught, then it stays caught. So now what is the principle of what is going on over here? Duryodhan somehow has the desire for getting the Pandavas' kingdom. Duryodhan had half of his kingdom. The Pandavas, they could have claimed right for the entire kingdom. But Pandavas says, okay, let them have their half, we'll have our half. From their half, they had expanded their kingdom through the performance of the Rajsuya Yajna. The Kauravas had taken all of it. And the Pandavas said, just give us our half kingdom. Duryodhan was totally irrationally attached to it. And that attachment to the kingdom had eventually led to the war. So for all of us, generally when we say we are attached, now if we are going to know if we are attached and what we are attached to, one simple way to know is, what do we think of when we have nothing to think of? That is a fair indication of our attachments. What do we think of when we have nothing to think of? Where do our thoughts go when there is no specific object where they need to go? Say if you're working in our office, we're driving through a crowded road, then at a functional level we have to do things and our thoughts go over there. But when we have nothing to do, okay, we are driving through a straight road and it's clear, then our thoughts may go towards our bank balance, it may go towards our looks, it may go towards our family, it may go towards food, it may go towards politics, it may go towards sports, it may go towards so many things. So what do we think of when we have nothing to think of? So see, it's when our consciousness is caught in certain things, that does not necessarily mean it stays caught in those things all the time. Now, there are many people who may be alcoholics or in some other addicts, they may be normally very functional. They may even be performing very well in their career. But once that desire for alcohol comes, then Sarva dharman parityajya mayam ekam sharanam pracha. So just forget everything else. But so we all have our attachments, we are to different degrees. And those attachments put us into illusion. I was a few weeks ago in Detroit. I did some programs and I had done a conference program, and it is the whole atmosphere there seemed to be in a total gloom over there. So it was a Western outreach program, mostly Western students were there. And I asked them, is something wrong? It's almost like, had somebody died? Has someone committed suicide, or what has happened? So I found that they have their football team, Detroit Lions, and after many years they had made it right up to the semi-finals, and they had lost in the semi-finals. And that's why everyone was so gloomy. Now there were Indians, some of them who had come to the program, I asked them, do you know about it? Yeah. Indians are more interested in cricket in India than football over there. So what happens is that we may be at a particular place, but if our consciousness is not invested there is no emotion experience in connection with that. Probably Indians in America got more worked up when India lost in the finals against Australia. So why? So Purusha Prakatistohi, the consciousness gets caught in matter depending on what our particular desire, our interests, our attachments are. And then we experience a whole lot of emotions that nobody else might be experiencing. And then once a person's consciousness is caught, it's almost as if sometimes the other person can't even understand, why are you getting so worked up about it? Now, sometimes it happens that we are disturbed about something and then we tell someone else about it and that person doesn't get disturbed. And then we are disturbed that the other person is not disturbed. So, this is how our consciousness gets entangled. The key is bhungte, the desire to enjoy. So now what happens is, the desire that we all have. You remember in the first session I talked about the snowball? Yeah. At the top it keeps growing. It becomes a snow boulder which can crush an entire person afterwards. So initially what happens is, it's like, initially we have the desire, but over a period of time the desire has us. The scales, the tables turn. The desire becomes so much strong that it catches us in its grip and doesn't let us go. So Krishna talks about this particular concept over here in the 13th chapter. And then he has mentioned this term repeatedly, that the concept of the gunas, the three modes. He mentions it right from the 3rd chapter itself. But then, because this is a central concept in the Jnani worldview, that Krishna will now elaborate on that. And he devotes an entire chapter to it. So, when Krishna is speaking, Krishna and Arjuna are not speaking in a vacuum. Both of them existed at a particular time. And there was a knowledge system existing at that particular time. Just like, say, we are having a discussion right now. Now, we all of us, we are existing right now in the 21st century, in 2023. And we all have learned English. That's how we're able to communicate. We all have a certain level of basic commonality of education. And say, I may give some examples from contemporary, like I gave the example of, say, I gave example of cricket or soccer or football. Now, if somebody from 1,000 years later comes and he say, what is cricket? When I first went to America, they told me, don't give any cricket examples, especially the American audiences. This was 2014, 2015. I said, why? For Americans, when you use the word cricket, they think of an insect, not a game. So, the idea is that the specific examples may not make sense because they are for this audience. You say the Gita has a specific contextual message as well as universal message. So now Arjuna and Krishna both know the idea of modes. But Krishna will elaborate that and then he will subordinate or integrate that within the Bhakti worldview. So now I will talk. So this was chapter 13. We focus on one verse, that it is our desire that entangles the soul, is as separate from the body as is a child watching a TV. The TV and the child are completely different, but the child can get completely caught in watching the TV. And at last point, Sat Asad Yoni Janmasu, that the soul can go into good and bad species because of that desire to enjoy. That's like in some parts of America and Canada, there's a lot of crime. So when the police say if somebody comes to rob you, just let them take what they want. Don't try to confront them, because they may kill you, and even if they take, your insurance will cover it. That's the idea. So anyway, so suppose somebody is I don't want to badmouth America. It's in some places it's like that. But the point is, say somebody is busy watching TV. The kid is busy watching TV, and a thief comes and the thief picks up the TV. And the kid is so caught in watching TV, instead of stopping the thief, the kid quietly follows and keeps watching the TV. So the soul becomes like that. The soul is so caught in watching material, in seeking material enjoyment, and almost the whole world and the situation may change. But the soul keeps staying glued to the seeking of the enjoyment. And that's how the kid can go from home to maybe the robber's place. And the robber didn't take the kid. The robber only took the TV and the kid went in. So, like that, the forces of illusion actually take the soul not by force, but because the soul is attached. So now, what is this attachment? That is, how does this attachment rise? That is, Krishna explains through the concept of the modes. Now, the modes are a complex concept, but I'll use 3 examples to illustrate it. First of all, the concept of the modes. What are the modes? The modes are subtle forces that shape the interaction between consciousness and matter. They are subtle forces that shape the interaction between consciousness. Consciousness means we living beings. Consciousness and matter. So how do they? So the soul is here, matter is here, and the modes are subtle forces that shape this interaction. So how do they shape the interaction? Consider 3 examples. The modes can be considered to be like colors. Like on a TV screen, ultimately whatever movie we are seeing, it is just a set of pixels. 3 colors of pixels are there, and they come together and they can create the image of a hero, a heroine, a villain, and all kinds of action scenes happen. So these colors are like the pixels in a movie screen, and just the combination of those pixels can lead to all kind of images being formed. So Prakriti Jan Gunan. So from material nature, these 3 modes arise. So the modes are like colors, they combine together, and when the 3 modes combine together, let's say 3 colors, pixels, can produce so many images. Like the 3 modes produce various objects. And those various objects can be food, they can be consumables, they can be electronics, they can be this, they can be that, they can be people that we find attractive, and then we get captivated by it. So this example is from the colors perspective, that there are colors which shape the images. Now another way to understand this is the modes are like gears. If you have a car with multiple gears, then we put the car in a particular gear, then the car will move in a particular way. So like that, the 3 modes, they are like 3 gears. And in each particular gear, we tend to think and function, think, desire, function in particular ways. What are the 3 modes called? Yes, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. The Sanskrit words, focus on those. So basically, you can say Sattva is the mode of where we are reflective. In Rajas, we are impulsive. In Tamas, we are destructive. So ultimately, we want to be rid of all these 3. So it's good to be reflective, but ultimately all 3 are a matter of illusion. So some people, they observe, they analyze, okay, this is what we need to do, you do this, I do this, let's plan it out together. So some people make things happen. Some people, they're impulsive. Oh, come on, let's do this. And they don't think things through, and then, hey, we forgot that, what about that, how will this happen now? Some people, everything starts unraveling. So some people make things happen, some people watch things happen. And some are so deluded, some people wonder what happened. They are lost in their own head. They come out of their head, they start becoming destructive. Otherwise, their plans and schemes get destroyed in their head only. They don't do anything at all. So, these 3 are modes in which we function in particular ways. Now, we all can observe this. That maybe when we wake up in the morning, we take a bath, we'll be a little more reflective mode. We think, okay, how should I move ahead? What should I do? As the day progresses, we run around and we had so many things to do. And I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. We get more rushed in doing things. By the end of the day, if something comes, I just want to finish this off. I want to get rid of it. I want to get it over with. So we may not destroy things, but we just want to get things over with. So we all go through these different modes. Now, some people may function more prominently in one mode and others in another mode. But the point is, all these 3 are, when we say they are gears, it's like in nature, you could put it this way, that if we consider there is an expressway, there is one lane in which people go fast. There's another lane in which people go at another speed. Okay. My drawing is messed up here. Let's put it. So let's put another line. So say this is lane 1. This is lane 2. What happened? No. This is lane 3. This is lane 2. Just skip this. So now what happens is that in say each lane we are going to move at a particular speed. So the modes can also, third example I gave, they are like lanes. Lanes, so gears means it's more like in our control. Okay, I can put my vehicle in a particular lane. sorry, I can put my vehicle in a particular gear. But you can say that if we are in the lane of sattva, in the lane of rajas, in the lane of tamas, then the sheer force of the situation, force of the setting will make us move in a particular way. So the point is that the modes are both external to us and internal to us. When we talk about the gears, they're internal, we are making a choice. But when we are in a lane where everybody is moving very fast, then if we try to go slowly, everybody will start honking at us. And then we push to move fast. So like that, if we get into a particular mode, it's almost as if the choice goes out of our hands and we are pushed in that direction. Now initially the choice is in our hands, like a gear. But once we choose a particular gear, we get into a particular lane after that, and then we are pushed. So it's that our bond, the state of being bound, you can put it, we are forced to act as we choose to desire. We can choose to desire, but once we have done the desiring, we are put in a particular situation, then things almost seem to go out of our control. We are forced to act in a particular way. You remember the earlier example again, B. Now once from B, Bollywood comes as autocomplete. I click bollywood.com, then after that, that particular website is opened. And I start surfing that website. We get caught in that. So once I desire, I press the enter, after that there's not much choice for me. After that things just move forward. So going back to the previous example of a child watching TV. I was in Duke University and gave a class over there in America. So they took us to, they have a very high-tech lab, and they took us to show certain things what they're doing in their lab. So one of the things features several years ago, not several years ago. So one of the features was that normally, say if we are watching something on YouTube, say you're watching one video and then several other suggestions come up, and then we can click one of those, and then that will start opening up, and they'll start watching that. So what they were doing is that they were developing a phone, or basically a screen, which could sense where the eye is focused. And we could set the parameter. If somebody looks at, say, a particular link on the side for 3 seconds, then even without pressing, that link will open up on its own. And that video will start playing. So we have to do nothing, we don't have to play it at all, just look at it, it opens. So that is actually very much the way our mind works. That as we choose to desire, what is my desiring? Okay, I look at it. Then that movie opens up, and then as that particular YouTube clip opens up, and I start watching that. So for many of us, do we have the free will? Yes. We have free will to some extent. There are these 3 different lanes. I can choose which lane I want to get into. Once I get into that lane, then I am swept by the momentum, by the pace of that lane. So anyway, these are the 3 modes. Krishna says they all function in their own way. And Krishna says that ultimately it is by bhakti that one transcends the modes. Mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Now, how exactly by bhakti one will transcend the modes? To explain that, Krishna goes into the next chapter. And he'll elaborate that over there. So, we will have some time for questions today at the end of this session, as well as we'll have a question. We'll have a session for question answers in the evening. So, now, which chapter were we discussing till now? 14. Yeah. 13 we discussed the Purusha Prakriti Stoi, that the soul gets caught. And 14 was about the modes. We discussed what the modes are. Now we move to the 15th chapter. Now the link is that Krishna is talking about the modes, and then he has said that you can get liberated from the modes by becoming devoted to me, by being surrendered to me. So how exactly does surrender to the Lord free us from the modes? So for this, Krishna gives another metaphor. He starts with the metaphor of an upside down tree. Okay. So now we have, he says, Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakam. He says there's a tree with its branches downward and its roots upward. And when he says that, he is using metaphorical language to convey things. The metaphors are a very implicit part of our life. And language, specifically, it can be literal or it can be metaphorical. And we often use our common sense and our intelligence to understand when something is spoken literally and when something is spoken metaphorically. And a lot of this depends on the context. I was in UK, I was in Leicester, and there was a youth meeting, and there was quite an animated question answer session from the students. And then after the session got over, the organizer came to me with a big smile on his face. And he said, "You killed it." I said, "Oh, what did I kill it? Why are you so happy that I killed it?" So that actually the term comes from a hunting metaphor. People would go and hunting in a group, and there will be some fox or some rabbit or whatever, and whoever will shoot it, say, "Oh, bravo, you shot it." So you killed it. Now hunting may be shocking and jarring for most of us, but that term has come very much into mainstream. So when it's for somebody who is used to that language, they understand you're not talking about killing physically. It's non-literal. So in many places in the Gita, it's a song, it's a poetry, so it uses non-literal language. So Krishna basically is using this metaphor to convey the nature of existence. Our present nature of existence is somewhat inverted, distorted. And he says that this tree which exists, this tree is what we are caught in, but this tree comes from the Supreme Lord. And then he says that Supreme Lord is me, and I have my personal abode. And that abode is the ultimate destination for everyone. So it's like that child is caught in watching the TV. Now the child may be consumed completely by watching the TV. But if the child turns away from the TV and looks around, where the child's mother is there, the child's parents are there, siblings are there, and there's a whole life, a whole world, a real world that is there, but that is possible to experience only when the attention is shifted from the TV to the real world. So when any metaphor is used, here I'll go into a slight philosophical point. A metaphor is basically like a rubber band. So I'm using a metaphor to explain a metaphor over here. So what do I mean by that is, if say I had to hold these tissue papers and then I use this rubber band. Now this rubber band may give me a grip, and with the rubber band I can hold the tissue paper. But the rubber band is not the tissue paper. It's not the bundle of tissue papers. But I could hold it in this way. If it's a large unwieldy object, I may not be able to hold it. The rubber band gives me a handle on it. Like that, every metaphor, it gives us a handle on the object. But the metaphor is not the object. The object is different from and often bigger than the metaphor. So if now we can use a metaphor to understand to some degree. The example given is that, again, a metaphor to explain how metaphors work in spiritual life is that Shakha Chandranyaya. Shakha is branches. Say a mother wants to show a child the moon. The moon in the sky, and the child is caught in looking only at the ground level. Okay. So the child is caught in, so the mother says, okay, can you see this tree? Yes. Okay, can you see this branch here? Can you see this branch there? Can you see the shiny object in between the two of them? That is the tree. Oh, Mama, I'll climb up on that tree and I'll catch the moon. You go into the tree, the moon is not there. So these branches are like metaphors. So the metaphors help us point toward the reality. So why am I emphasizing this point so much? That from this metaphor it can seem that if there is a reality and there is a reflection, then the reflection has no reality of its own, isn't it? The reflection is just an illusion for our eyes. But earlier we had mentioned that the Gita's worldview is this world is real and the other world is also real. So this is a metaphor, and the point of the metaphor in the context of the Gita is that stop looking at the reflection, start looking at the reality. But so every metaphor has a particular point, and if we overlook the point of the metaphor, say any metaphor we take, so often you make a point and then there is a point of the point. Point of the point is, why is that particular point being made? So every metaphor is like a point, and the metaphor has a reason why it is being communicated. So for example, if you consider, what is the standard metaphor for soul and body? Sorry? Yes, so we have the car and the driver. Now, if you consider there's another metaphor. So in this example, the soul is like the driver. But then there's another metaphor, the chariot body metaphor. Have you heard this metaphor? Yeah. Chariot. Now, in that chariot body metaphor, who is the driver? The intelligence. It is not the soul. The soul is the passenger. So now, is the soul the driver or the passenger? Well, each metaphor is conveying a different point. The soul body metaphor conveys that agency. It is not from matter. That is the simple point being conveyed. That the activity, the agency, the energy for movement, this doesn't come from the car, that has to come from the driver. Like that, the agency comes from the soul. Now the chariot body metaphor, it conveys something different. It conveys the mechanism of the soul, subtle body and gross body interaction. So each metaphor will have a particular point. So is the soul active or passive? Well, it depends. The soul is a source of agency, but the soul is not directly acting. The soul is acting through the subtle body. So there are different metaphors, and each metaphor conveys a particular point. Now, if we consider one of the metaphors which is used for this world is like a dream. And when you wake up, Jiva Jago, Jiva Jago. You heard the song? Wake up, O soul. So now it's like we are in a dream and we have to wake up. Now if we are in a dream, then what we experience in the dream, that's not really real, isn't it? Once Prabhupada was giving a lecture about this point in the early 1960s, 1966, 66, 67 actually, the early days of our movement. He was speaking how this world is like a dream. And one of his disciples, he said, okay, so when you said this world is like a dream, then that wall is also a part of the dream. So he said, that wall is a dream, that wall is a dream. When he walked straight to the wall, and he walked to the wall, bam! Hit his head. And he went, Swamiji, you said that this world is like a dream. And I tried to walk through the wall and I got a big bump on my head. So Prabhupada I said the world is like a dream, not that the world is a dream. So now what is the similarity in that? See, from the dream metaphor, 2 points can be drawn. One is unreality, the other is temporality. Temporality means temporariness. So, in the dream, what we experience can be said to be unreal, but that is not the point of the metaphor. Temporality means that in some ways you could say what we experience in the dream is real because it has real effects on us. If we have a nightmare, we may wake up with our heart pounding and our body sweating. So there are real effects on us. So how exactly we define reality is very complicated. So each metaphor has a particular purpose. When we understand the purpose of the metaphor, then we can take the proper lesson from it. Otherwise, we can get caught in unnecessary confusion. It's like what is called stretching the metaphor. If like I have a rubber band, and if I stretch the rubber band, I can stretch it up to a particular point, but if I stretch it too much, what will happen? Either it will snap back or it will break. So like that, the metaphors shouldn't be stretched too much. Any metaphor that is stretched, then that will lead to misunderstanding. So Krishna uses this point to say that there is a reality beyond this world. And I belong to that reality. In fact, I am the center of that reality. And if you connect with me, then you will be freed from the material existence. So to give an example of this, I'll conclude this particular chapter. Say if we are in an ocean and we are facing waves. Now, sometimes the waves might be small, and even the wave comes, sometimes we are on the coast, and the wave hits our legs. It just feels nice, soothing, comfortable. The water is hitting our legs. But sometimes it might be a giant wave. And when the giant wave comes, then we retreat. If it is coming very fast, we may flee, because it can knock us over. So like that, the modes affect us. And sometimes the effect of the modes may come in the form of small wave. So we feel, we are thinking and we are reading and we are studying, and suddenly the mode of passion starts coming. What am I doing wasting my time? My friends are earning money, they are doing this, they are doing that. I have so many things to do in my life. What am I doing wasting my time like this? But then a thought comes, okay, yeah, there's a time for doing all that, there's a time for doing this. I want to focus on this right now. That wave, we're able to tolerate. But sometimes the wave may be just huge. And say if we are on the land, we can retreat to the land. But if we are in the middle of the ocean and then a giant wave is coming towards us, where can we retreat? We can't retreat anywhere. What we need at that time is an anchor. So if there is an anchor that we can hold on to tightly, then the wave will still hit us, the wave will still try to fling us away. But if we can hold on to that anchor, then we will not be slipped away. We will not be flung away, swept away. So that anchor is Krishna. So when Gita says that the modes are there, the modes will, in the ocean, they'll be like waves. But if we can hold on to the anchor of Krishna, then that Krishna is a reality who exists in this world, but he extends far beyond this world. And to the extent we hold on to him, to that extent, the waves and their ups and downs will not affect us so much. Okay. So, this is chapter 15. Purushottam Yoga. He talks about it to build up on this point that each one of us can actually go beyond the effect of the moves. Then, after that, we'll try to complete 2 more chapters here. Won't take too much time. So, chapter 16 is probably one of the most predictive chapters of the Gita. Predictive means it predicts or depicts the situation in today's world. So, this chapter is basically, if you consider the tree of material existence, Krishna talks about what exists at the, whatever way we draw the tree. Let me put it this way. It's not a tree, but imagine it is a tree. So there's a top of the tree, there's the bottom of the tree. There's a reason why I'm drawing it in this particular way. The point is that at the top there is the divine nature. At the bottom there is the demoniac nature. So when Krishna says that he is the supreme being, and by taking shelter of him, one can transcend the modes, then naturally the question comes up, why are some people more inclined to take shelter of Krishna and why are some people less inclined to take shelter of Krishna? So those are the extremities of human nature. So broadly in human society there are 2 kinds of people. Some people are wise and some are otherwise. So now there are divine and the demoniac. I'll make 3 quick points about this divine and demoniac nature. Krishna talks about this as a nature, not as people. What he means by that is, it's not a simple category. It's not that, I can say, I don't like you, so you're a demoniac person. No, Krishna is not making it that simple. He's saying there are certain qualities that characterize the demoniac nature. And there are certain qualities that characterize the divine nature. And most people are a complex combination of various qualities. So some of those qualities may be divine, some of those may be demoniac. So we can't be very simplistic in this analysis. But so the whole purpose of when we learn any system of classification, it is not to put people into boxes. Because then that can be very reductionistic. So that's the first point about this nature. The second point Krishna says is that in this particular context, that the qualities we have, they are changeable. So the qualities may come from birth, but the Gita says birth is not destiny. That just because somebody is born demoniac, that means they are born with a certain set of qualities that are associated with demoniac nature, does not mean that they have to stay demoniac like that. Just because somebody is born with godly qualities does not mean that they will stay godly or divine throughout their lives. So everybody is changeable, because if you go back to the earlier metaphor that I talked about 3 levels of existence, there is the body, the mind and the soul. The soul, mind and body. So this divine or demoniac nature, it is actually present in the mind as a conditioning. And the mind is conditioning, you can't see the red over there, but the mind's conditioning is reprogrammable. So there is no such idea that some people are demoniac and that's why they have to suffer, that they are demoniac. But whatever is the tendency, it can be changed. It is a changeable tendency. Now, sometimes when 2 people are talking, they may be talking about a particular mentality, but both of them know who they are talking about. But they don't use the name of the person. Like say in newspapers and others, and nowadays there are libel laws where if you mention a particular name, then those people will do a court case against you. So what you do is you don't mention the name, but we tell such details that everybody understands who is being talked about. But afterwards, you can say, we never mentioned your name, we just talk about a general principle. We are talking about a general principle, but it is clear who is being referred to. So like that, if you look at this particular verse, we'll see how what Krishna is talking about becomes so clear. So he says, Idam adyamaya labdham. You can try to say it is Idam adyamaya labdham. Idam adyamaya labdham. Imam prapse manoratham. Imam prapse manoratham. Idam asti idam apime. Idam asti idam apime. Bhavishyati punardhanam. Bhavishyati punardhanam. I have obtained this much wealth. Maya labdham. Imam prapse manoratham. I made these schemes and I got even more wealth by that. The asti idam apime. I got this much and I have more schemes by which I'll get more. Bhavishyati punardhanam. So Krishna is saying one thing is this person is greedy for money. Now we could say, well, everybody wants money. And so many people are greedy. Does that make them demoniac? Not exactly. So the next thing that Krishna says is important. Asau maya hatah shatrur. Asau maya hatah shatrur. Hanishye chaparanapi. Hanishye chaparanapi. Ishvaro aham bhogi. Ishvaro aham bhogi. Siddho aham balvan sukhi. Siddho aham balvan sukhi. So he says that I have killed this enemy. And then I'll kill that enemy. And in that way, I'll be the controller, I'll be the enjoyer, I will be perfect. There will be no one to compete with me. So basically, we'll see the degeneration of thought over here. See, from being greedy to becoming murderous. So who is a person who has tried to kill enemies in their life? In the Pandavas' life? Duryodhana, isn't it? He's tried to kill Bhima, he's tried to burn the Pandavas. So Krishna, while he's describing this, Duryodhana was greedy. But he was not just greedy, he was greedy to the point of being murderous. So the key point over here is the demoniac are defined not just by their desires, but by their boundaries, or rather the absence of boundaries. It is not the desire for money that makes them demoniac, that is there, but it is even the devatas desire wealth, even the devatas desire sensual enjoyment, but it is the absence of boundaries that makes a person demoniac. I mentioned this earlier. See, we all have anger, but we all have certain restraints to our anger. No matter how angry I get, I may yell, but maybe I'm not going to use profanity, or I'm not going to physically attack someone. We all have certain boundaries, and the demoniac people are characterized by a deliberate disregard for boundaries. Just don't care. Say, if we are working as in office, now in office there's competition for getting a promotion, getting next job. Now there's routine office politics is there. There's some backbiting, backstabbing is there. But even when people do that, say I may speak something about, I may tell something about this person or that person, but people have their points. I won't badmouth somebody's family. Then it's not just professional, it becomes personal. So somebody may speak some lies, but I'm not going to do anything illegal. Everybody has their boundaries. And the boundaries are actually what define the character of a person much more than the desires. Everybody has a desire for wealth. Everybody say the male-female attraction, the sexual attraction is universal, it's there in everyone. But the difference between a divine person, a demoniac person, is not the absence of that desire. It is Ravan, when he had a desire for Sita, for him he didn't care that Sita was married. That was just an insignificant inconvenience. That is a disregard for boundaries. Duryodhan, when he tried to kill the Pandavas, did he regret after that? What do you think? Did he regret? Yeah, he regretted. He regretted that his plan was not successful. So, he had no boundaries in the sense that, hey, what's wrong with that? I have my desire to fulfill that, whatever I want, I will do that. So, in life, competition, the way we live in the world, competition is unavoidable. But there's a difference between rivals and enemies. So, in competition, did I mention this difference earlier? No. So, when there is a competition among two people, and rivals means both want the same goal. Say, we both want the same job, we want the same promotion, maybe there's a love triangle, both want the same person, whatever it is. So they're rivals. But when you become enemies, the goal itself becomes destroying the other person. So rivalry may be there even among godly people. But when it degenerates to enmity, the focus starts being on destroying the other person. That boundaries are lost. So the defining characteristic of the demoniac, when Krishna says lust, anger, greed, these are present. These are the three gates to hell. But then these are present in everyone at one level. But the problem is kamesha, krodesha. This lust, anger, greed, it rejects boundaries. And it rejects boundaries, it becomes disastrous. And the idea of boundaries is there even in today's world. That say, now drinking may be illegal. It may not be very good for health, but drinking is legal. And many people may drink, but drinking and driving is illegal. And many people who may drink also, they have enough sobriety to understand if I have drunk, I should not be driving. So there is a certain boundary that even people who drink respect. So a person's character is often defined by their boundaries. And a demoniac person is one who in the pursuit of their desires starts disregarding the boundaries. And they are often, not only they disregard the boundaries, they are often proud of the fact that they could flout the boundaries. That they could do this. So, though aham balavan sukhi. See, I killed that person, so clever I am. I'll kill that person also, and I'll be so clever. So that, the absence of boundaries is what characterizes a demoniac person. And if a person is not voluntarily ready to accept boundaries, then boundaries have to be imposed forcibly on that person. So if a person in civilized society, if a person does not accept the boundary that if you're drinking, you cannot drive, then a boundary has to be imposed on them. Your license itself will take it. You cannot be driving. If they hurt someone, they will be put in jail for that. So in the case of Duryodhan, he was not ready to accept any boundary. Literally Krishna said, give the Pandavas just 5 villages. He was not ready to accept that also. There were no boundaries to his greed. And then the only solution was, a boundary had to be put in terms of he being stripped of his power, and because he is not able to give his power, he would have to be stripped of his life also. But so the point is that with the demoniac, no voluntary boundaries are accepted. Then forced boundaries have to be imposed. And that's why violence is a necessary reality in the world. Sometimes people say, oh, we should never fight, we should never have wars. It's ideally speaking, that's a good conception. But the reality of the world is that there are many people who will never accept boundaries. And if they don't accept boundaries, they'll just destroy anyone who opposes them. Before Srila Prabhupada was introduced to the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition through his Guru Bhakti Thakur, he was a follower of Gandhiji. And he was a part of the Indian independence movement. And while Prabhupada still, in many ways, he adopted this idea of simple living and high thinking and other things, which Gandhiji also taught. But Prabhupada was very strongly opposed to Gandhiji's interpretation of the Gita. And the Gita's whole battlefield setting is metaphorical. And actually, the Gita is a book of non-violence. So Prabhupada says non-violence for a politician, for a political leader, can be a strategy. It cannot be a principle. Strategy means, yeah, in this particular situation, let's try to solve this in non-violent means. But if there are people who will not accept boundaries, then what are we going to do? He said that the Jews should never do anything to oppose Hitler and the Nazis. Let them just leave themselves at the mercy of the Nazis. And they just surrender them to the mercy of the Nazis. Then what will happen is, and they said their higher nature will be awakened. But now, not all the Nazis were demoniac, but their leaders were definitely demoniac. And the subordinates didn't have the moral or organizational strength to stand up to them. And they ended up doing demoniac things. Something similar happened when extremism rose in the Hindu-Muslim conflict that broke up at the time of partition. He said that the Hindus should not oppose the Muslims at all. That's okay, we would like to have a peaceful solution. But when the extremism was going too high, no, there has to be some way to stop the extremism. If people don't accept boundaries, then boundaries have to be imposed. So, non-violence works with people of divine nature. That means because they accept boundaries voluntarily. Can non-violence work? Many times it can work. Because they also understand, oh, why have destruction? Let's avoid it. But it doesn't work for people with the demoniac nature. Because for them, even if there's non-violence, their idea is, okay, let's stop war right now so that we can prepare and we'll attack in a bigger way later. So it doesn't work that way. So when Krishna is talking about the demoniac nature, he is in one sense telling Arjuna that Pandavas have tried everything to settle something peacefully and it's not been settled. So then force has to be used. So this is the 16th chapter. And then, now when Krishna describes the divine and demoniac nature, he describes it in such stark terms. Stark means such black and white terms that it begs a question. For example, somebody gives a class. If I say a class, and I want to speak 3 points in this class, and I speak only 2 points. And then after the class, towards the end of the class, if nobody asks the question, okay, what is the 3rd point you want to speak? Then I may get a question, did anyone hear what I speak? So sometimes some points are made in a question begging way, that this should raise a question. So what Krishna is talking about is, there is a divine nature and there is a demoniac nature. That's what he describes in chapter 16. So then Arjuna's question is, what about those in between? Because the whole of the world cannot be divided simply into black and white. So as soon as this chapter ends, the first verse, the question that Krishna asks, Arjuna asks is that you have given the criteria, Yah Shastra Vidimutsujya. Shastra can refer to scripture, but Shastra can also refer to boundaries. These people, Shastra Usruchya Vartate Shraddhayanvita. They may not follow scripture, but they are not simply driven by demoniac desire. They have some kind of faith. Where are those people situated? And in answering this question, again now Krishna draws on the concept of the modes. He draws on the concept of the modes. So, what does he say? He says to understand a person, look at the way they function within the modes. So, is their behavior in goodness, in passion, ignorance? And he talks about primarily three things. See, each one of us is situated broadly in three circles. One is the bodily circle, that means we are situated in the body. Then the other is the social circle. And the third is the environmental circle. Now from each of these three, we can get klesha. We can get distress. On the bodily circle, what is it called? Adhyatmik. The social circle is Adibhautik. And the environmental circle is? Sorry? Adi-daivik. So, basically, these are three circles in which we are situated. And within these three circles, we take certain things from the body. The body is a tool for functioning in the world. In society provides us certain facilities. We take certain things from society. And similarly, the environment provides us certain things. So we need to do certain things in return. We take certain things, we need to give certain things. So from each of these, we are naturally, just for our existence itself, we are going to take certain things. So we need to give certain things. So what is it that we give? What we give back, Krishna calls as, what we give back to the body is tapa, is austerity. What we give back to society is dana. What we give back to nature is yajna. So yajna, dana, tapa, they can be specific activities, but they are also broad principles. The principles that what we are taking from the world around us, we need to be giving back. So, say for example, nowadays, there is intermittent fasting is becoming quite popular in the Western world, even in India. Okay, we eat, we just enjoy with our body so much. Okay, then let the body get some rest. Fast for some time. So now intermittent fasting is becoming a fad, or it's becoming a trend. But in the tradition, when we fast once a fortnight on Ekadashi, that is something intermittent fasting only. It's a part of our tradition, so it's tapa. So we take from society, we need to give charity. There's so many people who are doing so many things for us. Now we may say, okay, but I'm doing a job and I'm giving back by working. Yeah, but apart from that also, there are so many ways in which people around us consciously, unconsciously help us. There are so many people who are less fortunate than us, so we need to give charity back. And yajna can be said to be fire sacrifice, but the principle of yajna was that we want to harmonize with nature. But there has been some research done that if we take exactly the specific ingredient that I mentioned in the Rig Veda, for example, for doing fire sacrifices, then that flame leads to some hygroscopic chemicals being released. And those hygroscopic chemicals cause the clouds to precipitate and rains come by that. So there is some scientific evidence which will point to the validity or utility of the fire sacrifices. But the key principle is harmonizing with nature. So Krishna says that when you are looking at a person, to see how much they are in harmony with broader existence. So the Gita is, while it talks about divine and demoniac nature, it gives us sophisticated criteria for deciding who is where. We all may have certain ideas of people we like, people we don't like. And based on that, we may think, these people are terrible people. There is religion and there is religious extremism. So extremism means what? That there are some people who just there is fanaticism in two broad ways. There are exclusivists. Exclusivists are people who say that we have exclusive rights to God. Like in the relationship, people may say we are exclusive with each other. Whatever. The idea is that means only when you follow our path, you will go back to God. Only when you worship our God, you will go back to God. And otherwise, you are going to go to hell. Then there are extremists. Now, extremists are actually kinder than the exclusivists. They say, not only are you going to go to hell, we'll help you get there faster. So, exclusivists are generally in thought, they are quite intolerant. Extremists, in action, they become quite intolerant. Now, we may categorize people, we may say people of a particular religion are extremists. But we may have people of a particular demographic. People from a particular region, they are very mercenary. They are very money-minded. They don't care for anything, they just care for money. People from a particular group, they are lazy. People from a particular region, they are foolish. There are stereotypes like this which are present in society. But the fact is that no demographic, no group of people are so simply categorizable. In every demographic, there will be people in goodness, there will be people in passion, there will be people in ignorance. So I was at an interfaith conference in Washington, DC in America, and then I was talking with a Muslim. We had a very nice conversation. And after that, he said to me that it's easier for me to have discussions with moderates of other tradition than extremists of my own tradition. And when I heard him, I said, yeah, that's true for me also. I have met people who are extremists and there's no reasoning with them at all. Extremists from my own tradition I have met. And there's no reasoning with them. They just have a completely black and white. So in every tradition there will be people who will moderate, there will be people who will extremists. It could be that in a particular tradition there will be more moderates than extremists or more extremists than moderates. But the Gita does not lend itself, or the Gita does not justify a simplistic labeling of people. Oh, this religion is like this, or this religion is like this, these people are like that. The Gita does not do that. Gita uses the modes. And modes, each individual has a particular combination of modes influencing them. And in this way, Krishna gives Arjuna tools, and through this he gives all of us tools by which we can understand that who is where, and who is more towards the divine nature, who is more towards the demoniac nature, for those who are in between. Now after this, in 18.1, Arjuna asked the same question, essentially it is asked in 3.1 and 5.1. So, should I fight or should I not fight? So he says, can you tell me the reality of renunciation? He asked basically the difference between tyaga and sannyasa, renunciation and detachment. So renunciation is more the order, like somebody renounces the world and becomes a sannyasi, becomes a monk. Detachment is more of a disposition. Somebody is detached. Somebody can be a householder, they can be detached. But somebody, so Arjuna asks, are these two the same or the two different? That's his question. Now Krishna answers this question. What does he do? While answering this question, he integrates the framework of the three modes that he has taught till now. And then he says, to know who is actually detached, you have to look at their consciousness, look at how they work, what their desires are, what their definition of happiness is. And in that way, you can evaluate. And essentially the point that Krishna makes over here is that detachment is not determined by externals in terms of whether somebody is renounced or not. It's determined by internals in terms of what their consciousness is. But he gives the analysis of consciousness using the three modes. So in this way, again, Krishna's expertise comes up, answer the same question, but from a different perspective. Not just a different perspective, he incorporates the perspective that he has just now taught, that modes, and then he gives the answer. So after this, Krishna will come to the devotional section in the Gita, which we will discuss in our last session. Let me summarize what we discussed today. Thank you for your patience in enduring this long session. So we discussed from chapters 13 to 17 today. Basically, we discussed the Jnana section of the Gita. The key theme we discussed in 13th was 1322, where I discussed about how the soul gets caught in the screen of material pleasure because of the desire to enjoy. The soul is like a child. This is like a TV screen. The material nature is like a TV screen. And this desire to enjoy is the cause of our entanglement. And then if the TV is stolen, what happens is the child follows. And that's how transmigration happens. Basically, the soul ends up going to a different body. Sad asad yoni janmasu. Then, in the 14th chapter, I mainly discussed the concept of the modes, 14.5 based on that. The modes, we discussed 3 metaphors. Anyone remember? Basically, what are the modes? They shape the interaction between matter and consciousness. How they interact is shaped by the modes. And 3 metaphors we discussed: colors, gears, lanes. So colors means that's how the objects appear to us, like the pixel colors. They create the illusion of attractive objects. So gears indicate that there is some agency of choice for us. And lanes means once we get into a particular way, we are forced to act. So we discussed we are forced to act as we desire to choose. Like once I see Bollywood.com and I press enter, then that's where I'm going to go. In the 15th chapter, we discussed about, primarily we discussed based on 15.5, how does surrender to Krishna take us beyond the modes? So I discussed 2 points over here. Metaphors are like rubber bands. We need to focus not just on the point, but the point of the point. Otherwise, stretch the metaphor and then it doesn't understand. So the metaphor of the upside down tree is not given to say that the world is unreal. It is to say that shift your vision to the actual tree away from the reflection. So each metaphor has a purpose. That metaphor, the purpose is shift vision. So if we shift our vision towards Krishna, who is the source of all of reality, then in the waves that are going to be here in this world, while we are among the waves, we can hold on to the anchor of Krishna. And by holding on to that anchor, because Krishna, he extends into this world, but he also extends beyond this world. So by holding on to Krishna, we can go beyond the modes. This is the person in the ocean can be unaffected if they have anchor to hold on. In 16th chapter, we discussed about the divine and demoniac. So basically these are natures, these are not people. So natures means that these are qualities, and these qualities can be present in different people at different times. And especially we discussed that the demoniac are defined not so much by the presence of desires as by the disregard of the boundary. Yes, the disregard, the absence of boundaries. They not only disregard them, but they are often proud of flouting them. So Duryodhan was a demoniac person, not just because he wanted a kingdom, but that he was ready to kill for gaining a kingdom. We discussed the difference between the rivals, which is natural in the world where there are only finite things available. But rivals are different from enemies. We also discussed here how violence may be necessary to impose boundaries on the demoniac because they don't accept voluntary boundaries. And in the 17th chapter, we discussed about what is there in between the divine and the demoniac. All those who are in between, we can perceive through the filter of the modes. So, what kind of charity do they give? What kind of austerity do they perform? What kind of sacrifice do they do? That shows how they are living. So, by looking at the life of people and seeing what kind of yajna dana tapa they do, we can determine their level. So, other than simplistically leaving people as, or this person from this demographic, or this religion, or this region, or this profession are demoniac, we look at how the people live, and then based on that, we try to get an understanding of where those people are at. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So we will have a break now. I don't think we'll have any questions right now. It's been a long session. Okay. So we'll meet at around 11:50. Around 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.